as I sit here drinking a mocktail that's supposed to taste like an old-fashioned, thinking how much better it would be with some bourbon in it. Actually, you know what? Just give me a minute here before I get rolling on around the division. Oh, that's so much better. Solanche. Weight loss journey be damned. There have to be some things a man holds sacred, like good bourbon and hating the Chicago Bears. This is a pivotal offseason for the Bears. Their coach, Matt Eberflus, was a dead man walking until they pulled out a miracle finish to the season and ended up at 8 wins. And this year, if they hit a number lower than that, new quarterback or not, he's probably gone. And the GM might just shuffle off the stage with him. So the question is, how did they do this offseason? This stops and starts with one issue. Did the Bears do enough to make rookie quarterback Caleb Williams' rookie season a winning season? So let's start with what they did right, things we hate and don't really want to talk about. They already had a solid top receiver in DJ Moore, but literally nobody else to throw to last year. And nobody anyway that would have been better than third string on any other team in this division. And I mean any other team in this division, top to bottom. Well, they did fix that issue. The Bears set up their quarterback with exactly what you would want. They have Moore, a player with inside-outside versatility. He's a chess piece receiver who they can move to wherever there's a hole in the team's secondary. And they added Keenan Allen in a move that screams, set up your roster to beat your division. Most of you probably don't know this, but Keenan Allen put up 511 yards in 3 games against the Vikings, Lions, and Packers last season. Obviously, this year's rosters aren't identical, but that kind of success is why the Bears brought him in and why that's probably a pretty good move. Their third receiver is Rome Odunze, who was one of the top prospects in the 2024 draft, regardless of position, in my opinion. So as far as receivers go, the Bears have gone from having 1 to having 3 really good options. Cole Kmet was fine last year at tight end, and the Bears added a lot of veteran depth. They added Gerald Everett. That's a name we've all heard because we've all drafted him at some point in fantasy football. And been extremely disappointed with his output. He's never done anything that great, but as a second tight end, that's pretty good. Behind him, they got Mercedes Lewis, who, again, he's not the guy he was years ago, but he's still a playable receiving option as their third tight end. Running back, they brought in DeAndre Swift, and as Lions fans, we all know who he is. He's a player that can steal you a game. Will probably steal them 2 or 3 games, right until he gets a boo-boo, and then he's out for a month. But behind him, they still have their number 1 back from last year, Khalil Herbert, who was pretty good. And that's a pretty solid 1-2 punch. As far as the skill positions go, the Bears have put together a pretty good group. They have veteran players who are going to get where they're supposed to go, and a young receiver to develop alongside their quarterback without the pressure of that receiver having to play like a number 1 immediately. He'll have games. He's going to have games where he puts up 150, 170 yards. Even with those other 2 guys to throw to, there's going to be weeks where Odunze is just the guy who has the skill set that's the problem for the other team. But even with those skill positions, their blocking is going to be a little bit problematic. Their tackles are fine. Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright aren't going to lose them games. That's a pretty good set of edges. It's not as good as, say, the Lions have, as an example, but it's fine. It'll get the job done. There's nothing terrible about that. Tevin Jenkins isn't exactly a scrub at left guard either, though he did flame out spectacularly as a tackle. When they moved him inside, he's fine. Coleman Shelton, also not a household name at center, but he was a startable player for the Rams. He was not a minus on the field. Nate Davis, the right guard, sucks. But a team has to be able to overcome one bad starter on offense. And right now, to be perfectly blunt about it, that appears to be what we might be looking at in terms of the Bears, is one bad starter. So what it really comes down to for them is how quickly they can get Caleb Williams to tap all that potential that got him drafted first overall. Like, generally, that doesn't happen in year one for quarterbacks. But the Bears did enough that a generational talent is really only limited here by himself. And he doesn't need to play hero ball for this offense to work. And then that usually goes one of two ways for a young quarterback coming up in a system. He either realizes that he doesn't need to play hero ball, and he plays within the system until something breaks, and then he makes a spectacular play. That's kind of the highest end version of that is Patrick Mahomes. The reason he's the best quarterback in the NFL is because he takes the play that's there within what's drawn up when it's there and then makes something when it's not. But the other side of the coin, and a thing that young quarterbacks tend to fall into quite a bit, and you'll see this with, like, if you watch Anthony Richardson play last year, just as an example, they'll forego easy yards looking for kill shots constantly. And those may or may not develop. And when they don't, they have to try to invent something, and there might not be anything to invent, and then it becomes problematic for them. When guys with talent like this fail, that's usually why. Now, the other way, of course, is like not putting in the work. Like, make no mistake, Jamarcus Russell was maybe the most physically gifted quarterback prospect of his era. Younger listeners might not even know who he is at this point, unless they've recently looked at a list of the worst draft busts in NFL history. Lions fans, we know him because he went one pick before Calvin Johnson. My point is that the Bears finally, after decades of half measures and bad process, look like they've done enough to support a rookie quarterback to give him a chance. Is that going to translate into being a better offense in year one of that quarterback's career? I hate the Bears as much as anyone. But that offense is likely going to be better this year, whether Williams really gets it completely or not. So how about their defense? Well, this secondary is probably one of the better groups in the NFL. They signed their stud corner that we were all hoping we would get in free agency all last year. Jalen Johnson's still there. Tyreek Stevenson is more than adequate on the other side, and Kyler Gordon is a fun player to watch play nickel. Violence is fun. That's your real takeaway from this video and everything else I ever say to you. They got Jaquan Brisker and Kevin Bayard on the back end, which is a nice package of defensive backs, all in all. But if anyone gets hurt, that's a problem. They really have nothing behind that. And as Lions fans know, they will. At some point, someone's going down. And at that point, it's a matter of whether the quarterback that they're playing against is going to be able to take advantage of that. Part of the reason that's going to be a problem for them is they need that defensive backfield to be working as a top-tier defensive backfield for this defense to work, because they really don't have anyone, as far as pass rushers go, outside Montez Sweat. Like, even the other pressure that other players do get is largely going to be because teams are focused so completely on Sweat. Like, Lions fans know what this looks like. We saw it with Kyle Vanden Bosch, and then we saw it with Ziggy Ansah, and then we saw it more recently last year with Aiden Hutchinson. And honestly, we're probably still going to see it with Hutch this year, but we'll get to that later in the week. This is a limiter because no defensive back can cover forever. Man, zone, whatever. Eventually a receiver is going to get open, and the Bears are basically hoping someone, literally anyone, can step up. And that can be a long wait. Like, they'll probably be fine stopping the run. Like, the defensive line is pretty good as far as that goes. But their edges and interior guys are just really weak outside Sweat in terms of the pass rush that they're going to be able to create. Their linebackers are very good, and they paid a ludicrous amount for them, so you'd hope so. That's just kind of that's the strength of their defense. Really, is back seven, which is an interesting way to do that. It's kind of the opposite of what the Lions have done, trying to get the trenches dealt with every single year. Not that they haven't, signed a bunch of guys, drafted a bunch of guys to play in the secondary too, but they didn't go out and spend a ludicrous amount of money to get the linebackers working. And I've always said the reason you want good linebackers is so that you can get the job that they have to do done with two instead of having to have three on the field. And it looks like the Bears kind of went that route. They're truly on their defense. I'd be kind of surprised if it wasn't a top 10 unit, kind of barring injuries to key guys. Like the whole thing falls apart without Sweat. That's really what matters here. Is they got to keep Montez Sweat healthy. And the secondary is shallow like a kiddie pool. But as long as their health holds, that D is going to be much better than that offense, probably for at least this year. And that's the year we're talking about. The Bears need to win 7 games to keep everyone's job. And this year, I don't think that's going to be a problem for them, sadly. I have them at 9 wins and third in the division for 2024.